In this segment, we'll show you how SketchUp works with layout to help you produce a professional set of documentation for your job. New in version 6 is the ability to send your model to layout. Select the layout document that you want to use, answer some questions, and CabinetSense now sends your model right directly to layout. It produces one page for every scene that you want to send. It also sends job information, and you can place this anywhere that you want in your layout document. So let's back up and walk through how we set this all up and show you how to get your layout document working. There are a lot of features that have been added or reworked in version 6 that help you produce professional documentation. The first item that we'll look at is what we've done to dimensioning. It now produces complete elevation documentation as well as plan. There are two types of dimensioning that we can do. There's dimensions where we will measure the outside of a cabinet or where we will measure the inside of the cabinet. So let's take a look at what that means. Our bay cabinet has two bays, but it is one cabinet. So if I do an outside dimensioning, what you get is the outside to outside dimension of the cabinet, of the bay cabinet completely. If I switch that to inside dimensioning, I now get what the inside opening is from bay to bay. So it excludes partitions and end panels. So if we zoom in and see how CabinetSense is now creating a dimension line for the inside, it's skipping completely the end panel. And here is our filler, which is 1 15/16 of an inch. On our plan, the same thing. Going on an outside dimension produces outside to outside of a cabinet. Going inside, again, uses the partitions. You'll notice that CabinetSense is missing one dimension where there are two walls on the same plane. You can easily add that by clicking on the wall and pressing dimension. Let's take a look at a more complicated example. Taking a look at the plan on this one. And so CabinetSense will do most of the documentation for you. In this case, this plan is a little bit more complicated because it has an island. So we'll show you how to do an island as well. Because an island, you want the dimensions to be surrounding the island. What we'll do, we'll select all of the objects, hold our Shift key down, and deselect all of the island at this point. Now ask for the dimensions. Having done that, let's go in and select one side of the islands because the cabinets are facing opposite to each other. And we need to drag these out. Oh, we don't want the pipes. We'll do the same for the opposite side. And this extra panel here is because this panel has been reversed. So we'll just drag it down. Oops. Perfect. Okay, so it didn't do these dimensions as well as the depth of the cabinets. We can use the dimensions, we can make duplicates, snap it, scale it to where we want it to be. And the same for the depth. We'll take this one, duplicate it again, and this time we'll rotate it 90 degrees, move it into kind of where we want it, and scale it again. And use Cabinets or SketchUp's inferencing engine to position our dimensions. And that takes care of a more difficult example. Let's take a look at some of the preferences that you have when you are dealing with dimensions. You can tell CabinetSense how many lines you want. So for example, on our plan, we are asking for a maximum of 1 dimension per upper cabinet and 1 dimension per lower cabinet. If we're doing an elevation, we can ask for 2 lines on each side and 2 lines again on the opposite side. Let's go take a look at let's take a look here. So we're asking for a maximum of 2 lines on the left and a maximum of 2 lines on the right. And the lines never include the wall. You always get the wall height. You can tell CabinetSense what kind of dimension lines we should ignore. So for example, you may not want a dimension line on your toe kicks. So set your height to exclude the height of your toe kicks. It'll also include or exclude things like filler pieces that would be less than 4 3/4 inches, end panels, applied ends, etc. That way, CabinetSense can pick out a really good line to dimension for you. You also have the choice of using an in-between dimension as well as a call-out dimension. And you can specify the width of when you want to use one or the other. Finally, you can use the CabinetSense dimensions, which come with a certain format and font, etc. Or you can choose to use your own. And in the new CabinetSense library, there is a dimension folder where you can edit those dimensions and change the font, etc., and use those. Let's talk a little bit more about how the dimensioning works. So let's go to perspective. If I try to dimension this, I get a message saying I didn't find any cabinets facing the camera. So what we need to do, click on an object of interest. You can use my Face Me tool, and it's now facing the camera. We'll take it out of 3D mode, and now we can ask for a dimension. If we wanted to do a plan dimension, we simply put it in top-down mode and ask for our dimension. And that's about as much as you need to know to get going with dimensions. You can now keep job information in CabinetSense as well. And that information is kept in the project component. And so with CabinetSense, you get a certain amount of fields. But notice that there is a user-defined area as well. And this is where you can add as many fields as you want and send all of these fields to layout. And so let's take a look at how we would add an attribute. Pulling up the component attributes of the dynamic components, we'll go down and find in the M series, M500 is the start of user-defined attributes. So we have an attribute called M501 contractor and has a value of Prancer. So what we'll do, click on Add Attributes, and you can use anything from M500 to M999 as your attribute names, and CabinetSense will never overwrite those. Let's call it Stain. We'll go M600 Stain. Click on the arrow to the right and select how you want to edit this information. Then we'll edit as simple in a simple text box. Let's call it stain and click apply. Re-clicking on the project component refreshes it, and stain is now in our list. Let's call it ebony. Another thing that you can do is add a header. And so this way you can group your information. Let's go back in and we'll type in M600 header. And that could be any name that you want. Just remember it's going to sort alphabetically. A minimum of 3 dashes. We'll call it finishing material. Click on the arrow to the right, and we'll just say that it's going to be basically a read-only attribute. Nobody will be able to change it. And click apply. Now when we re-click on the project component, it's disappeared. But what's happened is it's sorted by your header name. So it's up here called finishing material. If you wanted to keep it down with the job information, simply go back in and change the way that you're describing the header. Re-click, and there we go. Now it's all being grouped under job information. And all of this information will be sent to layout. So let's take a look at how we initiate layout and set up our templates. We've now opened layout. All of layout's templates are held in a read-only folder. And CabinetSense needs permission to write to these. So the only way that we're going to do that is by creating our own folder and keeping our templates in there. So the first thing we'll do is we'll look at the preferences in layout, and under folders, we can tell layout where we want to keep our folders. We'll click add, and what I'm going to do is create a folder inside my CabinetSense library. So I'll just right click on CabinetSense library, go new, create a folder. And I'm going to call it CabinetSense Layout Templates. And you'll see why I gave it a name like that in a minute. And choose it. It's now in our list of template folders. That's step one. Now we're going to go look at our templates that are in layout and choose the one that's most appropriate for us. File new. And there are lots of templates to look at. For our example, we'll go and just choose a very simple letter landscape template. We'll click on it. And at this point, that's all we're going to do. Let's just save it back into our template library so that CabinetSense can write to it. File, save as template, and here's our CabinetSense layout templates. I'm going to click there. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it letter landscape and click OK. That's it for step one. You do that for each template that you want to use, open it, and then just save it back into the CabinetSense template library or folder. And now, let's send it to layout. Click on the Send to Layout button. If you've made any changes, it's going to ask you to save them. And now, click Send. I've already gone right to where my library is. First time in, you would navigate to it, and then after that, CabinetSense will remember the location. I'll choose Letter Landscape, and now I'm getting a message. And basically, CabinetSense is telling you that this is the first time that it has used this template. And it knows that because it's read the template, looked at what's inside of it, and found that there's no CabinetSense markings. And so what it's going to do is not going to export at this point, but it's going to present the layout template to you again. But this time there's a difference. There's now a rectangle. And this rectangle can be moved and sized to the area that you want CabinetSense to write or create your scenes in. So now that's the area that CabinetSense will use. And that's the inside page. I can also look at the outside page. And they're basically the same in this case, so we're good. I'll go back in, and the last thing I'm going to do is hide the drawing area. So there's my rectangle again. I clicked on it, it became visible. I'll simply hide it, so it's no longer there. The other thing that CabinetSense has done has added all of the job information attributes into the layout model. Going to the document setup and looking at auto text fields, all of the attributes starting with CS are CabinetSense attributes, and CSU are the user-defined attributes. So you have contractor and you have stain. Notice the values of these fields are the same as the name fields, other than they have braces rather than less than, greater than signs. So let's go ahead and modify our template and put some of our own attributes on it. So going down to the project title, if we click on it and double click, inside the brackets is the name of the attribute, in this case project title. We could change this to CS project title. Oops, don't hit enter, just click outside. If it comes back with curly braces, you know that we have found a CabinetSense item. The other way to do it would simply be to go in, go to the text menu, choose Insert Auto Text, and up pops the list. And so change it to what you want. So now we've changed it to stain. We'll just undo, and we'll go back and do it using auto text. And CS project title. And we will center. We'll go to text, align, center. Okay. And we could do that we've done that on our inside page, on our outside page. Let's take this, we'll just grab it, and let's move it into a different area. And over here, we'll add a new field. And we'll use our auto insert. To be our client, so CS client, and then we'll insert the full address of the client. Now, you'll notice the bounding box around the fields compared to the bounding box around this field. And the difference is we're going to make this a bounded rectangle. And now what I can do is stretch it. And again, going back into our text, we'll align it to left and align it to the top. Okay, so now we could actually give it a little bit of room. Oops, grab that. There. Okay, let's say that's a day. And we'll simply save it. And this time, when we select Letter Landscape, all of the information is there and CabinetSense will send it through. Choose from no scale or use a particular scale. Use raster mode, hybrid. Raster is the quickest to export, so we'll leave it at that. And I'm going to take this scene and put it on my cover page. And the floor and the project doesn't have much model-specific information for this go-round. I'm going to leave them off. We're now sending the information over to layout, and once it's been formulated, it will open, and we'll have our document. There's our job information coming through. Whoops, looks like we didn't change that. We can change it here. Click outside, and looking at our other pages, we have our, again, job information here, and we could change our logo, put our own logo in here, etc. And everything comes through quite nicely. One of the nice things about layout, and even though this video is not about how to use layout, just some of the things, you can go back. I'll go to the cover page. I can double click and I can change. I'm basically working back in my SketchUp model. I can scale it, move it over, do all kinds of things. I can take it, I'll click outside, take that rectangle which holds the image, and I can make copies of it, hold down my control key, and do that a few times, and change our views. Maybe I'll do the plan view, maybe I'll do the and it's very easy to tailor a layout document to your needs. And finally, you can print this document, or you can export it to a PDF. So let's go ahead and edit, see what it looks like. And there's our PDF document, ready to hand to our client. That's it. Thank you very much for watching.